All right, welcome to the Lean Into Art Cast. This is a show where a few visual storytellers get together and explore some kind of creative topic that we like to dive into deeper and try to understand more. And we have a strategy for that where we start in the abstract and get into the practical. We do a little warm up before that. And guess what? I'm joined by a ton of people today. My co-host, hi, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a coder and designer, and co-host is Jersey Drozd. Welcome, Jersey.
Hey, Rob. I'm Jersey Drozd, cartoonist and teaching artist. Let's go around the room and introduce everybody. We got a full house.
Yes. Oh my gosh! And we have a guest co-host and a guest co-host, Kate. Welcome back, Kate Shields Stenzinger.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And returning on the show is none other than Dave Say. Awesome to have you back, Dave. Designer and awesome person at large.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Dave.
Good to be amongst all these awesome people.
It's kind of fun here. We've got a packed crew because we didn't know if as far as scheduling and timing and whatnot, we had the extra co-host. But this is going to be fun. I can't wait to explore our big topic together today, which is looking at tough creative project questions. And but we don't want to just jump right in, right? We might hurt ourselves.
Yeah, best to ease into it.
Yeah. So, what do we do normally to warm up, Jersey?
We do this thing called the curveball. It's an intellectual warm-up exercise where one of us pitches a question at the rest of the group, not looking for a pat answer or any kind of advice, but just more of like a kind of a chew on this kind of thought, just for a few minutes to warm ourselves up, stretch out, as it were, stretch our brains. And Kate, you teased that you had a good one.
I actually have two, and I've been having much debate about which one to go with. So we'll start with one, and if it falls totally flat, then I have a backup I can always go to. And this is jumping right in a little bit, so everybody kind of stretch and think. As we're talking about asking the tough creative project questions, the thing I wanted to start with or jump in with is kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a little dramatic, but when do you abandon a project? How do you know when it's time to stop when something you're working on?
The first thought that comes to mind when it brings nothing but pain. Pain and misery and drudgery. At least that's a sign that you should be doing something else for a while. Then maybe you'll feel better. Come back to it.
Dave, you wrote on your blog recently about, it was a book about decluttering.
Yes.
I wish I could remember the name. I
should remember the name too. I remember it's by Marie Kondo, this Japanese decluttering a consultant enthusiast. It reminded me a lot of the movie Amelie for some reason. And I think it's because the Marie Kondo character has a very, I would say, dreamlike but very serious way of looking at the world, much like the character in Amelie, or a little bit like the character in Harriet the Spy. Harriet, I don't even know if you remember that, but precocious and like of a very serious demeanor regarding cleaning and having things in your house that only bring you joy.
That was the line in that.
And it was like
this notion of being able to look at something and say, like, does this bring me joy or doesn't it bring me joy? And she tied it into this concept of, if it doesn't bring you joy, then is it because you're worried about preserving it for future use, or is it because you can't let go of it because of some past use? Right?
Yeah. She just get rid of it.
I wonder if there's any trickle down there to like on a project, right? It's like we talk about sunk cost fallacy. Well, I made it this far. If I just push a little bit farther, it's going to start to make sense to me again. Or if it's something like, if I don't keep doing this, I'm not going to get any more gigs, right?
Yep. Imagine I don't know. What do you mean by? Let's come up with a hypothetical trickle down scenario. So let's see. So okay, you're in a project. You feel nothing but resistance. You feel like the weight of the earth tugging at every corner of your body. Your limbs hang an inch lower than they normally do. And you say, but I've been doing this project for 10 years, and I still can't play that lick from Stairway to Heaven. What's the point? What do? Do you give up? What's going to drag you down even further? What's going to, you say, oh, I give up, I'm going to play the bass, or maybe the harmonica is fine. Well, maybe I guess hope is hope and maybe a selective memory for pain. Maybe that's what keeps people going. I'm not putting this out as serious advice. I'm just kind of going with the whole idea of the what did he call it? The warm up, the spitball,
yeah.
the warm up. Yeah.
Rob?
That's you put an interesting point on this, Dave, where you're adding almost like the I know you're exercising there too, but like you there's a theme to a couple of your comments that it's like, is there, if there is only pain, maybe after a brief pause or whatnot, are you finding any kind of hope, any kind of like where's the next step, what's the outcome, and and hopefully that's a way to inform. Is it time to start letting go, or is it time to keep holding on? Because the flip side of sunk cost fallacy is grit, right? You know what? I saw it through. I played 11 years, and now I've got that licked down because I had that crisis moment that I faced and was able to find just a new handle on the situation.
Yeah.
So that's not to Kate's question, is like, when do you give up, though, right?
When do you abandon,
When do
not
you
give
abandon?
up? And I think that's, I mean, it's not when do you give up, but when do you know it's time to stop? You're working on something. I mean, I think when do you give up is an interesting question, but I know this group well enough to know that giving up is not an option for most of you. So.
I give up all the time. Let's see, like, what did I give up on today? Well, I was going to move a server today, and I'm going to do it right after I get this stupid program to compile and upload to some place where other people can look at it. And actually, I didn't give up on that. I should have given up on that much earlier, because I should have moved the server today. Well, there's no hurry on it, but I should have moved the server, just got that out of the way. But on the other hand, even as I was facing all these difficult moments, it felt like at least I was, well, I thought I was going to say at least I was making progress, but I wasn't. I was just beating my head against stuff, and nothing was working. But during the little breaks I was taking afterwards, like, oh, that didn't work. How the hell does this thing work? Who writes this stuff? There'd be a little flicker of an idea. So, well, maybe it's like this. Or I would just get back a little bit more confidence and say, well, maybe I'll just try one more time. I mean, it beats moving servers. It's interesting. And if I could get this to work, it would be pretty cool. So maybe that wasn't the best example. I didn't give up on something, but I felt I should have. I should have been the responsible person and done something that was like of known benefit. Moving the server would have unblocked like moving of other servers, and that would have been a good thing. But it was so boring just to think about. And it would involve a GoDaddy server too, and I wasn't very excited about getting into their back end.
I think part of what I'm hearing and what everybody's saying too is that part of it is knowing the difference between, is this just the resistance talking, or is this an exercise in futility, and what are the resources I have to deal with this right now, right? So like, yeah, when it comes to that, like I give up on things just today myself. So yesterday in my ETP, because I started using it again to start, like getting out from under a sense of feeling overwhelmed with my work. Yesterday, I had a storyboard gig that came in, and I got 9 frames done in like one evening, and I had only set myself the task of doing 6, so I was feeling pretty good, right? And I wrote this little thing. Yeah, I'm like 9 frames today. Remember to keep it loose. Just dive in and work. To heck with the resistance. I actually wrote those words.
Yep.
Feeling pretty good, right? And then the next day, it's like in the middle of the day, I put oatmeal, not feeling it, walk, clear my head. I had to walk away from it and go for it, like literally just go for, a 30-minute walk, because it just, like, I had to clear my head and get into a different kind of emotional state in order to take on what I had to do today. Does that make sense, Kate? Does that even come close to touching on it?
Well, what I think is interesting about everybody's comments is you're all talking about things that you put down and come back to. Dave, eventually you're going to move that server.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to happen. You know, Jersey, you're going to come back from your walk and sit down and do the work. So if you think more about, you've got a whole bunch of projects that you're working on, you're, you know, engaged in many activities, is there a thought process you go through to figure out, or, you know, figure out when is it time to stop with a project, an actual full project? So I'm going to push on that just a little bit as we're
Okay.
stretching and warming up here.
I've got one. So I don't play guitar that much, you know. So and it's not that. So there's different. Maybe I just totally jumped off the cliff as far as the right direction on the question, because it's not permanent, right? And I think that's how I'm able to do it, because I tell myself that it's as a pursuit. It's not contributing directly to the really key projects, and my time being a very precious resource, whatever. I mean, everyone's managing their time, right? We all have the same amount of time. I don't mean to overly, jump down that, but like having a lot of, concern toward managing that, toward getting these other things progressed and shared and completed or whatever. That habit of, playing without, there's a certain lifestyle benefit I had, but I needed to set it down as far as how much time I would invest in it, and it would take away from the other stuff. It's not a permanent set down, but it's a mighty, it's a very present set down, right? So in the last 4 months, I think I picked up my guitar once, right? And that's a big deal for me.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It's and what allowed me to do it is that belief, I know I'll get back to it again,
Right.
someday. I know. I don't know if that's a cheating. I don't know.
I have a project that I have projects that I've abandoned or given up on or walked away from, and as Rob was talking, I was thinking about what was the feedback that informed me that it's time to stop. And I think part of that feedback is the reaction I'm getting from the people whom I'm trying to serve to the thing, is it the reaction I want? Are the people who are the intended people I'm trying to service here? And this ties into our main topic probably quite a bit. Am I even servicing them at all, or am I servicing an entirely unintended group? Right? I didn't set out to make something that was of service to you. I meant to make it for you. And if you're the one reacting to it, it's time to recalibrate. Do I want to service this group, or do I want to recalibrate to go in this direction, right? So part of it comes from who's reacting to the thing, and it's not. I haven't abandoned many things because of no reaction. It's usually because I didn't get the reaction I was hoping for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. On a similar train of thought, I was about to say, like you just said, there's very few projects that I've chosen that I've really totally abandoned. Someday I may learn how to play the bass or something like that. It's still in the back of my mind. It's still a possibility in my mind. Certain things that have fallen away because they're no longer physically possible. I'm not going to be a teen programming prodigy anymore. I've aged out of that, so those are easy to let go. But the relationship-based ones, those are the ones those are the ones that, when I run a simulation about where our collective directions are going, of someone I'm working with or a situation I'm in, versus where I ultimately want to be, or where I realize where I don't want to be, that's when I start to disengage. And there's this process and I'm thinking of jobs I've had when I'm working in a place, and I realize I'm in a position really of making the lives easier for these people for not a lot of money, and what am I going to get out of it? I mean, it sounds like a selfish thing to say, but it says we're not aligned in this. You want something different from me that I'm no longer willing to offer to you, and I'm going to have to leave because I am making a choice now, a difficult choice. It could be between friends that I would love to help, but in the process of doing it, realizing I'm suppressing my own desires and my own dreams for them, and that makes a difficult walk-away decision. And then in some cases, just don't see eye to eye on how things resolve. If you're arguing with someone and they have a point of view and you have a different point of view, and and you can't come to a common ground on that, you can still be civil about it, but you're not going to be able to work together on it. And so those are the kind of projects I tend to let go of. They sort of are. I recognize that there's an ending that has to be, or someone is going to suffer, probably me. And I'm not selfless enough to put myself into that role of being in service, just because it would be the good, upstanding thing to do. To me, it seems more like that's kind of the really nice chump thing to do. There's that scene in Star Trek: The Next Generation when Picard gets stabbed in the heart, and he's like he's recovering, and then Q shows up and offers him the opportunity to not make the decision that led him to having this artificial heart that was malfunctioning. Do you remember this one?
Yes.
New Jersey knows what I'm talking about. So then he makes this wish that he didn't do it, and then like the next scene, he's up and he's in 10 Ford or something, like enjoying his tea, and he's a freaking ensign because he didn't make that choice to change something like this. And then I thought it was an interesting parallel look at how like one or two decisions that one makes. I'm going to make the decision to do something that I think is great versus being the responsible person.
Right. That was the whole crux of that episode, was that like the reason he gets his heart stabbed is because he's being a pig-headed, borderline obnoxious kind of jerky guy. But that is what leads him to be the person who can make command decisions and assert himself into a situation. Whereas by backing off and saying, no, let's not fight these guys, it's not the right thing to do right now, then it leads to a series of things where now he's never in charge of anything.
Yeah, it's one of those key consultant moments, like in media, that
would that we could all have a Q to show up and do that for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I feel like we walked around that one. How do you feel, Kate?
Yeah. No, that's excellent. I think you guys, it was exactly kind of the question I had and the angle I was going for, and it was, I think your answers were really interesting, and I think kind of ending there with this whole even kind of concept of leadership, and it takes kind of those leadership qualities in order to make those decisions around, when is it time to walk away from something that isn't useful.
Awesome. All right, well then I'm going to go ahead and kick over the bridge music so we can start talking about topic. Going 10,000 feet up. Looking at the topic in abstract, look at it from every conceivable angle, see if we can find some hidden dimensions and depths. And then we'll close out with some ways to put all this thinking into action. So we've got David Say here of davesay.com. Let me pull up your website real quick. I've got it right here. You can see this wonderful design journal that everybody should visit twice today, davidsay.com, S-E-A-H. And, gosh, where do we want to start, Rob?
Okay, so Dave is I think what you might call he's one of those unicorns where he's got a lot of different skills and has gone on different adventures where he's a designer, an engineer, a game developer, and an inventor, right? And also he's got this whole writing practice where he's shared so much of his journey over the years that he's through his mindfulness, I would summarize, that has come up with like some of these amazing productivity tools as well, and some of them have been mentioned already, like the Emergent Task Planner, and other things too, like that. Like I found it really interesting. His word counting calendar looks super cool, handy for people who are in a need to have a regular observation of your word output, but if you're in some kind of challenge like NaNoWriMo, holy moly, that looks super useful. And Dave, so when like you have a bio on your site that says that you're an interactive designer developer, is that how you like to summarize what you do?
That's the easy label.
Yeah. I think
even going back to unicorn, I'm not sure I fit that. I mean, if there was like
takes one to know.
Well, I think when I think of a unicorn, I think of a creature that is kind of magical by nature, whereas like for me, it's sort of magical by accident, or it's like something spilled on me, or
nice.
I have a lot of different interests, and I pursue them all sort of haphazardly. I didn't trot majestically up from the fort and lay my head in the lap of like a comely virgin. I sort of tripped over it and then fell in this place. And said, hey, there's some space here. I should put some chairs out. That's kind of the attitude I have toward things.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
very stylish horse. How about? No.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Totally being.
I was thinking
no,
of badger in
metaphor
a
is
smoking
great,
jacket. That would be good.
Sold.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Just demonstrating your inclination to invent. One of the things that I think is really cool is that has come up as a topic on the Lean Into Artcast. For instance, is the your yearly reflective process, the whole the goals through Groundhog Day. Speaking of smoking jacket wearing rodents.
Mm-hmm.
But Jersey, you were introducing all these things about Dave, and I jumped in there too. Basically, we like to pull in Dave as like this as an expert thinker on creative topics,
and somebody who wrestles with the difficult questions that come out of taking on creative projects and does so in a very public way. I mean, in a lot of ways, Dave, you model exactly the kind of philosophy that we extol on this show, is this idea of make a thing, reflect on the thing you made, and if you're brave enough, share the reflections that you're doing. And one of the things that you've been very public about, for like the blog is over 10 years old now, is you document the process of the creative challenges that you're facing. And it's never with this kind of didactic, like, all right, kids, here's my top 10 things of what not to do. It's more like, here's some things I'm struggling with. And here's some things I learned from it. For me personally, maybe it'll be useful to you. And it turns out that, yes, it is, because people are looking for answers to those kinds of questions themselves. And having somebody share that process and that kind of thinking, sharing your thinking strategy, I think that's the value you bring, is you bring a point of view and a thinking strategy to solving problems, even if it's not necessarily the answer to all problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's, the reason why I do it is because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for other people sharing with me their processes, their fears, showing me how they did things. And, for me, I see it as a moral imperative. To quote Real Genius, one of my favorite movies.
Oh my gosh! Do you have pajamas like Laszlo?
No, I don't even have pajamas. I mean, this is the closest I've gotten is to those sweatpants, dress pants. Well, I had to get them hemmed. I haven't been able to wear them yet. But to be able to share what I'm thinking, I found I was fairly comfortable sharing what I was thinking. That's kind of an extension of like the work I was doing when I was working in like these web agencies. I found out that if you just told people what you thought, they trusted you more, and you weren't trying to sell them on something or convince them that we can do it, but you tell them this is how you do it. Look at this and look at this and look at this. This would be a problem. I'm not sure exactly how we would deal with it, but it might be one of these two options we would look up right away. You might look into it yourself. And the reason why I did that was that I thought that the clients who would run away, take that idea and run away and do it, they probably, would have been fine by themselves. And the ones who thought they could do it, run away and do it, they'll come back when they realize that they don't want to do it or they don't know how to do it. And the ones who were basically looking for someone who would really think through their problems, they got a little taste of it, just by talking. And the generosity, and to me, I'm not giving away a lot of stuff because what they're paying for is like the effort into it. The ideas, like even at that time, I had the idea that ideas themselves, by themselves, were not worth a whole lot without any heavy lifting behind them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's sort of the extension of what I did in the blog was like that. I didn't want to say, like, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, you should listen to what I'm saying, because I didn't have that credibility. I hadn't written a book. I hadn't written like a best-selling game. I hadn't done anything of public note. All I had was the ability to share what I was thinking, and then hopefully people would follow along. And actually, I wasn't even thinking about I'm going to be like I'm going to be a consultant guy on the internet. I'm going to be a guru. I'm going to put out an ebook. I wasn't thinking like that because I didn't think I was going to be even reading in the first place. I was really doing it for myself so I would remember things. And in the process of writing all this stuff down, I would say, okay, I think I have a better handle on that. Might as well put it on the internet. I mean, why not? I have this thing, and I'm not doing anything. I'm not writing that great book or making beautiful artwork or anything else that I would have liked to have made. But so at least I can share these handful of words. I just got in the habit of doing it.
No, that's great. I love this idea of like just sort of stumbling into what you need to be doing, because the story that is very popular, and the story we like to tell ourselves when we're young, is that you're predestined to do something, or you have to know what you're going to do when you're like 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
You're graduating high school, time to pick a vector and stick to it, kid, because that's what you do. But
Yeah.
and it's not been my experience. My experience has been like kind of bumping into the walls and going like, okay, well that worked and that didn't work, and now I find myself someplace else entirely. But it's still pretty interesting, as long as it stays interesting, right?
Yeah, I think if you're honest to yourself, that's what happens.
Yeah, that maps my experience. I don't know about you, Rob and Kate, but I'm betting it's probably pretty similar for you guys too.
Absolutely. I think just when you said that, I kind of had a flash of my own kind of career pathing and everything that I've kind of gone through. And, I graduated college with a degree in child psychology, and my first job was as a paralegal in complex business litigation.
Wow.
So, and that was just kind of how life went, where it wasn't, okay, this is what I'm going to be, this is what I want to do, here's how I'm going to get there. It wasn't a direct path. So you're right, you just kind of bump into things as you go, and I think it's a fun journey that way. At the time, it wasn't, but looking back,
Right. Looking back, having survived it.
Exactly. Hindsight being what it is.
Yeah.
But do we know people who actually did the way that you described it? Like, says, all right, here I am exiting out of high school. I'm going to vector toward business school over this direction with a detour through Harvard or Yale, whichever one accepts me. And, if that doesn't work out, I already have Brown to go to. So you go in vector, and then you're there. You find out, like, this is where the money is. You go work as a quant on Wall Street for a few years. You burn out. You find someone who's raising organic natural foods in Vermont. You take your money, you move out there. You spend a couple years doing that. You hire a really great media PR person to help put it all into perspective. You get a ghostwriter to write yourself a nice book. You put it on the website. You make a nice one-pager. And you get Lightning Source involved, and you start rolling out those self-publishing things. And then you start booking appearances. You get on what's that reporter site that helping a reporter. You get a few quotes here and there. That's enough to launch you on this is all outlined in Tim Ferriss's first book too. The credibility building, trajectory.
See, I thought you were like working up a draft for a CW sitcom.
No, actually, I wonder what's that guy's Carl Newport? Like, when you look at his path, he looks like the person who said he had an idea when he was in high school, and he went for it, and now he's doing it. His book, I think, basically is about that. The book was called.
That sounds like most comic artists, though. Honestly, you got
Really?
you have your characters you dream about in high school, and then you make a book about them. I don't know. Doesn't necessarily lead to Wall Street and all that, but anyway, not to derail you with the silly side comment. But
well, but where I thought we could go with this, Rob, you had two really awesome big idea questions to kick off this section, and I wanted to frame it up with something that Dave recently posted that was great. It's like, so we got the Groundhog Day review that we hinted at earlier. And it's this thing where, Dave, you set out at the beginning of the year, rather in February, like saying, these are the goals I'm going to try to achieve this year. And then you do a check-in every month with the corresponding date to the corresponding number of the month. So you do one on March 3rd, April 4th, May 5th, and so on, all the way up to December 12th. And people can follow along in the blog at davidsay.com. But the first check-in you posted recently, and you kind of went back and restated what your goals were, and we're going to pick at these a little bit after we get through the big questions. But eliminating time-based thinking, that's fascinating. Reduce possessions and responsibilities that sap energy.
Yep.
Build full-time stationary business by the end of the year, and find will to create and share more. That's another one that Rob and I kick around a lot. And build health and strength. Okay, so you got these goals. You got plans to set these goals in. The plans to put into action to meet these goals.
There's no plans.
What's it? Oh, no.
There are only intentions. Those are the intentions I have. There's no plans. Because if I made plans, that would be thinking about time, and that's not on the list. And that's on the list of things not to do. Because I've tried that before, and going back to like when you give up, it's kind of related to that idea that if you. No, I'm not sure what it's related to. I forgot what I was going to say. But that idea, if you're thinking about time and what you're going to do in the future and how you're going to do it, that can be a huge distraction, particularly if you are competence-seeking and quality-seeking, and you're unable to deliver either of them in the amounts that you want. Like that little bit about what Ira Glass was saying about the distance between your taste and your ability. Yeah. And so I'm nowhere near. I had to recognize that I'm not as competent as I wish I was at doing these things. I can't make a video game like you just fall out of my butt. I can't illustrate beautiful paintings. I can't write books like Stephen King. There's all these things I would aspire to do but I can't do. But worrying about how fast I'm going to do it, or like the timetable to do that actually for my personality, that gets in the way of me actually starting things. What I find that if I put myself in that little space, and I can imagine myself in a room that shrinks until it's just me in it, it's an all-white room, and there's a little platform in front of me, and on the platform, when I open my eyes, is just the only thing in the room. It's the project I'm working on, and it's the only thing in the room. It's the only thing in the room because if there's anything else in the room, I would look at that instead. But once I'm stuck with it, I don't know if when you were a kid and you were on a long car trip and the only thing you had with you was a juice box and a book to read. After you finished the juice box, you had to read the book. Right. And once you started reading the book, it wasn't bad. You'd fall into it. You'd go into the flow of the story. Your suspension of disbelief would engage in all these wonderful things. When I had to do anything like programming, which I dislike doing, it's a means to an end. Because I have to go into that box, and I had to close everything off. I had to not think about anything. Time has to go away. And then the first thing I need to be thinking is, I want that bug to move on the screen. How is that bug going to move on the screen? And let me not think about how well it's going to move or if it looks good or not. Movement. And then let me get this property value and add a number to it and see if it moves. And that will feel like I've done something. And then once that happens, I've made it move that way. Maybe I can move it a little bit differently. And then you kind of fall into this very short, I'm not sure what the term is.
Incremental?
A very short attention response loop in which you're doing something, you react. Doing something, you react. It becomes very interactive, and it can draw me in. And then once you're in that place, moving that thing around, it's like it starts becoming like playing, and you're not thinking about oh, am I doing this right? No, I'm just figuring out how it works. And then eventually, over time, you learn to trust your own instincts about how to make that work. That's something that's new to me, too. So if I forget about time and quality and competence and scheduling and estimates and being responsible, professional, and all that stuff, and I am just allowing myself to experience and move with the work, one thing I am confident about is I know I can get better from that. Because I haven't had enough experience about learning things. Like, I eventually learned how to do this. I can program this. I can program that. And I'm not the world's best at it, but I'm pretty good, and it does what I want it to. I'm not feeling lost most of the time. I'm feeling like I can nudge in the direction I want fairly confidently. I may not know which direction I'm going to shove it in first or how that thing is going to shove back to me, but now, as I'm older and have been thinking about the artistic process enough, realizing that art is about exploring uncertainty and embracing it and seeing what happens and playing with it and sort of kind of working with it. I used to think that artists, they had an idea in their picture and they mechanically transcribed it onto a piece of paper. I thought that's how it works. It's wow, they must be really good at imagining things. They must see in perspective when their eyes are closed.
Your lips to God's ears, Dave.
I know, and the first time I went to an illustrations studio in a school and saw all the photo reference they had, I was going, what? You're allowed to do that?
Well,
wow. And not only that, it looked so awesome. There was so much reference that was so cool.
One thing you said in your blog that I really connected with was this notion of embracing slowness, and that's what I think kind of like it's like an overarching thing of what you're describing here is that decoupling the association we make between skill and speed. If you're good at something, you just do it fast. That's all. It's efficient. It's an efficiency thing, and the creative process can get more efficient, but there's like certain parts of it that are just like it's brutally inefficient, and there's nothing you can do about it except grind through it, right?
Yeah, it's the level of uncertainty that you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with a creative problem, if it's a creative problem you've solved before, you can have a measure of efficiency at it, especially if you've done it 100 times before. If you're dealing with something brand new and you're in the land of, like, I've never been there before, that's where things slow down because you don't know what's going to be the best thing. And if you're challenging yourself, as like a lot of creatives I know, they want to do something that's different, new, and original. They're by nature, they're going off of the paved road, and they're going to this place. They don't know what's there. You know, fire-breathing ants, like turtles that have. Well, I can't think of a bad thing.
Switchblade combs. I don't know.
Switchblade comb-wearing turtles or smelly turtles. That would be bad. You know, razor-sharp banana leaves. Yeah, there's all these and the things that you didn't know you had to deal with. And then put on top of that the feeling that you need to be really good at navigating that stuff, you know. So for me, like now I'm able to recognize like this is something that's new to me. I know other people have mastered it, therefore it doesn't seem that new. But to me, in my context right now, here in this place, I am like a newborn, and I have to learn how to move with this, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take patience, but it's also had to be tied in with the sort of desire to want to be able to do that. And recognizing it's going to take me a long time to do that, you know, it's something that I'm allowing myself to feel. Rather than like, oh man, I'm so bad at this. Everyone else is better than this. Well, they are. Sure, they are better at you. They're way better than you at this. But this is new to you, and you won't know until you get to the other side of that, where you, what it will be like. I don't want to see if you're good or not or bad or not, but it may be like another stepping stone to something else. And that is the creative challenge that I have tried to teach myself to embrace fairly recently, because, you know, before I used to rationalize it away. It says, well, cartoons are for children anyway. I don't need to be good at that. Or he says like, oh, I'm doing this other very important work that involves computers. I mean, really, when you compare them, one of them is clearly more marketable. I'm not making a bad decision. You know, but this is really a way of me just rationalizing away, like, I can't draw to save my life. Or maybe I could draw to eke by the next round of some game show, but I probably wouldn't make it to the end. You know, I'm not going to be the last person on the island.
That'd be a
So
great
now
game show.
So now I'm
Creative
starting.
drawing to stay on the island.
Yeah, it's mixed with
Yeah.
Survivor. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Did you see the Great British Baking Show?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
That's-
keeping up with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's like the best game show I've ever seen, because everyone's so nice. Even though there are people who won, they're all friends, and they had a big picnic at the end.
Yeah, they did. They did. And
They
even
did.
the
It was like the
judges,
best.
even the judges take care to make sure that they say like, I liked these 3 or 4 things about what you did. Like
Yeah.
nobody ever gets completely slagged on the show, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Yeah.
too bad that this didn't work out, but oh my god, this cake is delicious. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great series to keep up with that, and MasterChef Junior or 2 cooking shows that I've doing some time too. But another thing that I think about, and this, Rob, we kind of talked about this, I think, on an extra lean or on Lean Entire Proper, I can't remember, but this notion of the quality of time rather than the quantity of time, and quality in the sense of what's the state that you're experiencing of time. And I think of something, there was a visiting author here in Ann Arbor, Ruth Ezeki, who did a book called A Tale for the Time Being, and she's a Zen priest as well as an author. And during her talk, she actually had everybody in the room meditate for, I think, 2 minutes. Just sit in silence and just, like, drink in, like, the quiet and, you know, try to focus your breathing and everything. And she was talking a lot about Zen Buddhism and this whole notion of it's not about trying to achieve some kind of elevated state of consciousness. It's about training yourself to just stop and observe time, not as something that's scarce, but something that has a quality to it that you can experience.
Yeah. That would be nice. I
Well,
am
I
a
mean, I think
time miser. I like to hoard time in huge blocks of it and share it with nobody. And I am so miserly about it. This is why I'm trying to work against it. That like I just don't want to give it to anybody, not even to like ideas that might seem like they may be a little bit inconvenient. Like, oh, I could start this project, but I would have to go downstairs and look for it in a box that I'm not sure where. Oh well, I guess I won't do that. Is there something better I can do? Is there something more efficient? This is the mentality that I've been trying to break. It'd be nice for me to get to that point. I guess that's what I'm
well,
saying.
what you're describing though is sort of an approach to help move you along that process, though, right? I mean, it's creating the the having the patience to actually step back and observe what is happening with this time, and starting to notice your own quirks and what is punctuating the time. Because
Yeah.
like for me, it's like if I notice I am getting let's see, uh, essentially maybe it's the negative feedback of projects that I should put down or what have you, and at least being able to observe it, it gives you a chance to start to I don't know, look for patterns and try to steer in a
Yep.
different direction.
Yep. Yep.
Um, is
It's
that what you were getting at, Jersey? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, and understanding that, like, I think one of the big things for me that I really responded to in Ruth's talk was just that we do, in the West especially, we have this notion of time being a limited resource, and it is. But a way to counteract that feeling is to understand that the time also has a quality as well. And I think part of this, like jealously defending one's time, is a way to help provide oneself more opportunities to experience it as a qualitative thing as well. Because if you're just reacting to what's in front of you all the time rather than taking charge of it and blocking off big chunks of your time,
Yeah.
you don't ever get the opportunity to experience it as a quality as well. So it's all tied together. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to learn to spend it more. Like I said, I was a time miser, and so I just hold it in stasis until it expires. That's no good. So one way of looking at this, like I'm slow at doing things, is like take as much time as it needs. Just like you wallow in it. It's like if you have you have an expensive kitchen table, and you've got like a roll of Bounty towels that you bought because like it'd be nice to use nice towels instead of the real cheap ones for the supermarket. Those luxurious like $5 a roll towels instead of like those 99 cents roll towels. And then someone spills some orange juice on your beautiful mahogany table. And you're not going to think like, oh, I should like sparingly use the cheap towels on this. You're going to just dump that whole roll of Bounty on that thing and save that table. So you use the stuff up. Or if you're on a trip and something bad happens, you use those resources up. It's like a special occasion almost, but I'm trying to think of time more as that kind of usable resource. And even if I'm using it what I might think is not very efficiently, or I'm not judging myself not to be a very efficient user of time, at least I'm using it. So I'm trying to, I guess, undo my scarcity mentality, because I find when I do that, at least stuff happens. Because as much as I like to sit back and observe the patterns, that really is a coping mechanism. It's not my natural state. My natural state is wanting things to go as fast as possible and be done as quickly as possible and have the best resources on hand and have the best expertise on hand and have it all in my head and available like within the fingers or so. Like you go bam and you can make that thing happen. It comes out just the way you want it, and like, hey, that's the way we do things around here. But the reality is, no, I don't have that ability yet. I aspire to it, but the booby prize for me, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, is like to take time as it slowly unwinds beneath you while you're watching things not happen. But if you're not thinking about things that are not happening, you're thinking about what is happening, or your focus is in that moment, then something happens with the connection of time passing, your mind, and the ability to, I guess, work that into something. I'm not sure if any of this makes sense, but there's at least two or three of these aspects I'm trying to. So I'm not trying to like enjoy time slowing down just for the sake of slowing down and say, look, I've decoupled myself from Western wants and desires. I want to experience time in a way that I'm, I guess, mindfully spending it.
Yeah, and you're talking about
Sometimes it
focus
goes
too, right?
faster. Yeah, if your attention has to be in that time stream. If it's not, if you're just watching time unwinding slowly and not being angry about it, that's a different kind of way of spending slow time or being in slow time than it is to savor a good meal or take the time 3 hours having a dinner with friends. That kind of.
I think the
kind of
key
thing.
in what you just said, Dave, is the word mindful, right? So to spending your time mindfully, and I think that's I think it's a trick for everyone. But just kind of hearing kind of everything you're talking about and kind of talking through, to do things mindfully. Go back to your table. Somebody spills the orange juice, and you could just dump the bounty on there. But in a mindful state, you might say, you know what? I am going to grab those cheap towels and, going to clean it up. And it is, about slowing down or taking that time to
Oh yeah.
be in touch with the moment. Kind of what Jersey you were talking about with the talk that you had gone to, is the moment has a quality to it. And what is that? And how do we bring mindfulness kind of to all of those states? And there's a lot of games and tricks we play, with semantics. One that I hear a lot is, instead of kind of thinking of our lives as so busy and we're so busy and I'm so busy and I don't have time for this or that because I'm busy, is to acknowledge that I have a full life and my life is full. And that kind of gives some language and some context to choice. Right, so I've chosen this full life, and so it's a reframing and it's semantics, but it's partly how our minds work. We can trick ourselves from time to time.
Maybe it has something to do with just being comfortable with the choice you've made about how you're going to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in your blog, Dave, you highlighted two, I think they were game designers that you knew, who you described them as being immune to deadlines. Immune to deadline pressure. They would take as long as they needed to take, and they always produced great work.
Yeah, these were artists that I used to work with. This is where I learned that idea. So it's like, it baffled me for years because I was in that manager mentality. Why it takes them so long? They have no idea how long it's going to do it. And they would just say, no, just wait. It will get done. And it got done. It was so irritating at the time. But I kept thinking about it and then I had that epiphany about, there's something about the comfort in the process they had.
Part of what's driving, I think, some of the influence in your decision process, I assume, is engaging in trade, and to somehow likely have that trade be informed by the trade of hours and expert hours or whatever for money, right? And I think that has this big reinforcement feedback loop where it's like, oh, okay, we frame things up. How long will it take or whatever? So this is a long setup for so is this sort of way that you're reframing this helping you change how you're going about your creative business, where maybe now would you be bidding or doing contracts based on sort of outcomes instead of time, or is it, I don't know, is there a reframing or a downplaying of the time aspect of your business in that regard, or is it mostly just projects that you're completely in control of?
It depends. I would say that I probably have never really tied time and the value of time to the way I took on projects. I mean, there's a certain chunk of money that when it gets to, says, yeah, that seems like a good enough chunk of money. It's not too cheap. It's not too much. And I can work within this budget, and let's make sure that this phase is short enough between 1 or 2 weeks, and I get a real sense of how the project's going to go. And if I don't think it'll go any further, then we'll terminate the arrangement there or renegotiate. I've never had issues renegotiating when I sense that the parameters have changed. So I tended to pick projects that I wanted to do, even though it may not have been the most lucrative. I would turn away projects that would have been lucrative but were too crazy. So it's we need an animation for this drug company over the weekend. And if I'm not doing anything that weekend and it looks like I can do it, I might take it on. But I'm not going to just take it on just because they want it quickly, And so this might burn some relationships because agencies are looking for people who will drop everything and deliver to them. But that puts me in that category of being the person who is dealing with other people's emergencies, and I don't want to be in that place. It's stressful. And they're not really emergencies that, oh, we're going to do this thing at the trade show. We need to have this thing done by this time. And we can get the script. It's a terrible script, and we had to rewrite it, and we can't rewrite it too much because it's the weekend, and everyone else has gone off for the weekend while we're working on their trade show that they didn't get rolling soon enough. And they get this thing done, and everyone high fives because it's done. But it was, in the cosmic sense, not a really great piece of work. Not really anything that that moved the needle emotionally on anybody. It checked off an empty box on the list, and there was a sense of victory from having done that. But it was a really hollow victory. So, those are the kind of things I would turn down, even though I could charge maybe a lot of money, double rush rate, weekend rate, on something like this. And they, then they had the money to throw it at. But it was, if I had the time and felt like doing it, I maybe would do it. But most of the time, I would say this is not the way I want to spend my time. So. I don't know if that answers your question. My sense of time is really screwed up.
It sounds like this sort of this mindset has been something that it's been around for quite a while for you. It sounds like, and just really valuing time in a way that tries to remove it out of that sort of panicked hourly context and. No, it's just that's interesting. Where I was guessing that was kind of a new development. It sounds like it's been something that you've been doing for quite a while.
I've always been mindful of where my effort goes. Maybe it's not entirely just time, but the effort and how much stress I'm going to feel with that, and whether or not I wanted to do it or not. And so there's situations in which I will take. No, actually, no. I won't. I generally don't take work if I don't think it's going to be, one, an equal participation from the person requiring it, and two, that there is there's some real message under there that they have that they want me to interpret, not them wanting to provide them with a message so they can trick people with it. Those are the situations I'll take truth over time any time. So if I sense there's a lack of, I think, integrity in the message or the desire behind the message. For example, if someone comes up to me and say, I really love your work, I want you to design a logo for me that's just like one of your logos, I can't do that work because the work I do for my logo work, that's my work. I'm not just going to sign that away. And what I used to try to do is say, okay, let's sit and talk about who you are as a person, what you want to do with your design, what is it you want to communicate with your company, your process. And generally, people aren't looking for that. They're not. They are looking for something that looks good on the side of the card so they can say, hey, check out the snazzy logo. And this says something about me that I was unable to articulate and am still unable to articulate. And so I stopped doing
it. Sounds like it's. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is exactly the kind of thing I'm curious about as far as a tough question. Now, was that something that you thought about and realized and then made a new choice, or was that sort of just baked into your sort of principles behind your approach? Or
it was something I realized after 10 years of trying to do freelance design for people and feeling that it never really sat well with me. So it wasn't continuous work, but it was maybe 10, 15 little side projects, design bits that would be doing this thing, and there was something missing from the interaction in it. There was something that was, as much as I wanted to help people find their inner voice and bring it out of them and help them map it to concrete physical examples in the world, or movies, or songs, or feelings, or words, it was not. At best, people would appreciate that I was trying to do that for them, but because for some reason it would not flow naturally from them, and at the time I didn't realize if I had taken on the jobs now, I might have approached it differently. I might have just given them an example of something I would have done and just let it go. But I had a very almost a militant attitude toward people needing to truly represent themselves in symbol and in word. And when they were unable to do it or unable to follow through with it, I felt like I had failed them. And they felt they had been failed too, I think. They didn't want to say anything, or maybe they weren't sure, but these were relationships that didn't last. Because either I was unable to cross a certain line of being generous with like what I did, or they were unable to cross a line to generating what it was about them that would work. And it occurred to me later that most of these people, they were enjoying certain aspects of my work, a certain like cleanness, a certain architectural quality to my shapes. There's something that appealed to them on some level, and they wanted to incorporate that into their identity. They didn't want to generate their own identity. And it occurred to me that most people think like this, like, what can I, if I was, actually I still have problems with this. Like, I keep looking for bumper stickers to put on my car, but I can't find any I like. Or to be able to find like badges. Some people can do this. They can assemble all these, like, their laptop is covered with awesome decals, and you say like, that's a cool dude. I can't do that. Just because like I get so caught up in what the labels really mean and fit together. And if I'd been smarter, I said like, you want to have an emergent task planner like logo for your company? Well, here's one. And then so they put that on the thing. Look, you'll use this type. Let's use these colors. Let's use these lines, and it'll look just like what you want. That's what Aaron Draplin does, for crying out loud. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't even realize that I was being too precious about it.
Let's see. So that now it sounds like you've turned a corner and you have a different strategy. But I mean, what you're describing. So, and it's helping me actually. I'm reflecting on some past projects that I don't even think I'd be able to unbox during the time of this show or whatever. But I'll take this away later, where it's like you're talking about, in a way, like a mismatch of motivations, right? Your motivation versus the client motivation, and also like a mismatch of like a identity, an intent, surface, what have you, where it's like
influency.
Fluence, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the client sees the surface qualities. They don't know your soul, Dave, or your deep, everything that went into that representation. And it's interesting that I don't know. So like, I'm just really curious how like it, in this conversation to explore, like, well, you make these tough observations, and then I'm assuming then there's some tough action afterward too, because if there's if it's implied where now you're making a new choice to convince people to pay for a service or whatever, based on as an outcome of that discovery. And
I would say there was a superseding choice, which was like I wanted to make my own stuff, not other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And so when it comes down to it, it's like just having talked through this with you, realizing that this is now actually an avenue. So yeah, I could making Dave style graphics, like just make everyone have the same look. I would brand them with my brand, and just give it away to them. So sure, you can have that. That's the Dave Say 3x2 logo shape with sharp corners. Like, I would make everything. Now you can look like this too, except in green.
You could be the Isaac Mizrahi of branding.
Yeah, and it would be, because I understand business a little bit better now. It's like, and it would just be business, and I would compartmentalize that as the design business thing. I would charge a lot of money for it and use that to fund my other stuff. But now I'm saying to do that kind of business, there's also the customer service aspect of things and the time that goes into that. And that's time that takes away from what are my dreams. If I ask myself, truly, what are my dreams? What is it I want to do? And that's what my head, those 6, 10-year goals. These things I've been procrastinating my ass on for the past, since I was in my teens. Thinking I can do it soon. I'll get to that next place. Someday I'll do it. But then it just never happened because for whatever reason, something else was more important, or something else came along, or I was tired, or it was marshmallow night. There's so many other things that seem more immediate. They seem more. They take less effort. They involve good feelings. And there's things that you don't know that you're trying to find out. So you think if I find to write the book, I'll delay by doing more research. But then, or the big one is like someone else asked me to do this work for them, and I'm responsible for it. And then at what point do you say, look, at what point do I get to be responsible for doing my work, my difficult work, the work that like I'm bad at now, but I nevertheless want to get through it and do, like this game thing. Like I went to college to study the stuff for making video games. I thought I needed to know how to build computers. This is like the mid '80s, and there weren't really fancy graphic computers when I went into college. By the time I graduated college 4 years, there were plenty of computers that did fancy graphics. And so I gathered all these skills. So I learned the hardware in it, and then I realized I didn't like engineering, and then I went into the software end of things, went into computer graphics design. I was doing shareware graphics. I went and worked in the video game industry. We started a game company. But at what point did I just make my own game? I mean, the first time we started the game company, I was the design lead for our game, but I was such a green manager. I didn't know how to deal with people or how to set expectations or any of that kind of stuff. And so, it was a very frustrating experience for everyone involved because we didn't know how to pace ourselves or what to expect. So I forget exactly where I was going with this, but the idea...
Well, you did just summarize my first game project as well, incidentally.
Right, yeah.
But wait, what I'm reminded of listening to both of you guys talk about this is it's reminding me of a conversation I just had today with another cartoonist about this notion of how we as cartoonists need to think of ourselves not only as producers of things, but people who do things that are our service as well. It's both a product-oriented and a service-oriented thing, not just in terms of freelancing, but in terms of, like, one of the things that's a discussion that happens in cartooning circles is publishers are more likely to take a chance on you if they know you have a big audience. So,
right.
In other words, you have to be famous before you can be famous, right? That's like the conundrum that we're all facing right now. Is we got to become Tumblr famous so that a publisher will take a chance on us so we can actually reach our audience and all that kind of stuff. And so, how do you get noticed, right? In a sea of web comics, and where the comics are not scarce. They're everywhere you look. You can find them anywhere. Just type the word comics, boom, you got 100,000 comics to look at. How do you stand out? Okay, well, you have to provide some kind of extra service on top of that. And so this cartoonist said to me, how do I know who I'm acting in service to? She's like, well, you teach. You got the teaching thing down. You service children and your community by acting as a resource for people to go to about, thinking strategies for making comics. But what service do I provide? And then I think about, like, the Dan Harmon documentary that's on Netflix right now.
Oh.
Have you watched it?
I've seen a lot of his discussions, but I haven't seen this.
Yeah, he's got that
particular
podcast, the Harmontown, right?
Yep.
And, like, one of the services he provides is very different from mine. He puts his whole life out there for people to just take it or leave it, right? He shares all of his anxieties and his depression and the fights he gets into with his girlfriend. And it's just all out there for people to just, like, do you relate to this? Here it is. There's the service he provides. So what I'm hearing from you guys is, because, Rob, you got your coat of arms. Dave, you've got your 10-year goals for 2024, which I'll pull up on the screen. And it sounds like you guys kind of backed up and said, okay, I know I want to make things, but I need to know why I want to make these things first, and then I can come at it afresh, right? Like, who am I trying to serve with these things? Because, yeah, Dave, you've got, like, the ETP and all of, you want to start this stationery business, but you know why you want to make this stuff because you like to make thinking tools to help people, right?
Well, it might be interesting to go through that goal, the stationery business goal, in a little more detail. The reason why I want a stationery business is because I see that as my retirement plan after 2015, 2016. Because I am seeing that the sales on Amazon are continuing to grow, and I'm seeing, just thinking number-wise, trying to think like a business person, dispassionately, that the more products I have, the more volume there is. The more volume there is, the more retained income there will be. At a certain point, that retained income will be equivalent to working a full-time job. And I would just have to sit at home, make these designs, and put them out there for people. I know from experience now a lesson that I never thought I would learn, that even would exist, that if you shrink wrap anything, you can sell it. And if I shrink wrap enough things and sell them, that's a living income. The bonus would be if it's stuff that I really liked and was good at doing, and that people liked just because. And so that was the emotional component of why the stationery business is something. There's a selfish reason for it. I don't have to do hour-for-hour design services. I can make one thing once and put things out there and know that by and large, they probably will sell. Some of them will sell better than others. But I know now that there's like a baseline of products that I make that enough people like that they are buying them. I don't know how long this will last, but it's also something I completely own, and it's a channel that I can completely own too. And so, like in the business sense, if you can own the means of production and the means of distribution and be the source of that original IP, you are in a much stronger position, especially if it's something that comes from you and you can back it up with your own affirmation of faith and your own experience. And like that's a kind of authenticity and integrity that's I was going to say it was like armor, but it's not. It's a beacon. It's a pinnacle. It's something. It's a landmark. It might not be a landmark that everybody wants to steer their life by, but at least it's something that they can evaluate, and they can make a choice about it. And so for me, that's the interesting challenge. Can I make things that are of use to other people? And the way I'm assessing them is not whether or not people like them so much. It's whether or not I like them, like it enough to share with people, and I think they might like it. So it's a slightly different angle I'm taking on it. So
that is an awesome reframing of the whole issue, right? Like in an age of analytics and metrics and everything, and all those things are important, but also not forgetting that really all-important metric of, do I like doing this thing enough to share it with people?
Yeah, you can tell. People can tell. People can tell if you love what you're doing, or even if you give a crap about it. I mean, like, it may not love every aspect of every farm that I've made, but it's pretty close to liking everything I made. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it out there. And the ones I weren't so sure about, like I just put them out there. So it's like, this was kind of interesting. And it's interesting enough that maybe one or two of you out there might be so interested they would write back to me and say why you thought it was interesting, and then that would be interesting to me again, and that would like drive the next conversation. That's something that tickles me. One more aspect of the stationery business is I just like paper. The idea of making my own notebook. I get so giddy when I go to the printer here and like they have some new paper samples, and I just see them and I say, "What's that?" Oh, that's just a new 20-pound like, can I see it? So, all right. And so it's like, wow, this would be a really good index card. Yeah, I should. And so I get all these ideas from these things, like because I'm feeling them and imagining them, what I could do with them. And they think I'm nuts, but but that's the kind of relationship I have with that kind of stuff, with the material mechanical properties of goods like that. And so that's an aspect I would like to explore more too, just manufacturing, making these things, and getting them out there. And for some reason, it tickles me to have the idea says like I make stationery, I make notebooks. See, here's one of my notebooks. It's Tanner. We can look at feel the smooth posters, like 10% post recycled waste paper, like it's and then I take this fountain pen and just see how it glides across the thing. Look at it, it's not bleeding through. That's on purpose. This is much better than that Moleskine stuff that you're buying with that cheap Chinese paper on it. This is premium quality, made in Vermont paper. I get excited about that kind of stuff.
You've got your pitch, man, and obviously it's coming straight from a place of passion for you.
Yeah.
And super informed expertise you've got a lot of experience and practice with this too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, what did you decide, or what direction did you go with the webcomic side of things, like the hundreds of thousands of webcomics people, and what Jersey was just talking about?
Mm. Yeah. So, well, I mean, for me, I feel like I've got that service aspect down in the sense of doing things like this show. I also do another show called Comics Are Great, where it's a chance for me just to sort of commiserate with artists and fulfill that networking function while still creating something that keeps my name out there. It's an easy thing to make. It's like it's an hour of my time. It's an easy thing to make. Keeps my name out there. Keeps people reminded that, hey, there's this Jersey guy who makes comics. And also, the conversations he has are very interesting and sort of like it serves as like a soft sell for the work that I do. You have a sense of, you can guess based on talking to me that I probably don't do, the wire kind of hard-hitting, gritty drama. You can tell that, okay, probably Jersey does something that has a flavor of his personality and his outlook. It's probably going to be something a little bit sunny, a little bit excitable, something like that. So for me, that's how I differentiate, and that's how I get the attention of people within my industry and for potential readers, right? More, to be crass, I mean, because like one of the things that you pointed out, Dave, that I thought was great is like there's a confluence of different motivations going on here. Part of it is just simple business sense and simple, like, SEO. When you search for Jersey Droz, I want my name to come up as often as possible. And so if I make a lot of things, and especially make things on YouTube, that helps.
Yep.
So it's a confluence of things, but also it's not as simple as just that romantic idea I had when I was 17 of, I'm just going to make really good drawings, and somebody's just going to notice them and give me a chance and give me a shot, and then I've made it, and I don't have to think about it anymore, right? When really what it is about a constant hustle, and it's a constant way to look for a new wrinkle to position your stuff in front of people, too. And
You like
there's,
thinking about it, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Did you eventually grow into thinking, like, I really do like thinking about this stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, like the funny thing, the story I love to tell is like back in 2002, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. My wife worked at the Phoenix Public Library, and I was working in publishing at that point. I was doing comics for Antarctic Press, and somebody at the library said, "Hey, we should get your husband in here to do a comics workshop." And my reaction was emphatically, no. I have no business talking about this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm faking my way through this. You don't want to put me in front of young people and tell them how to do this thing. I can't do it. And then it took a few years of me talking with friends and making observations and insights and valuations and really, puzzling out this creative process stuff, where I realized, no, I actually really do like talking about this stuff, and it's okay that I don't know the answers. What's interesting is discussing. And then I started podcasting, and then that changed a whole lot of things, which started a teaching career, which started a whole bunch of things for me. But yeah, the initial impulse was like, no, I'm not qualified. I don't have permission to do this thing.
Yeah. The permission thing, I wonder if that's one of the first hurdles that people have to get past.
It was for me.
Yeah. I think the way I had reframed it then is like, no one's watching us anyway. What's the worst thing that could happen? That's kind of how I framed it.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that it was far better to try things and see what happened. I eventually realized this, than it was to not try anything. Especially when I realized that most things don't kill you. They don't actually kill you,
Dave, I think you need to start making T-shirts too, because I've been capturing a lot of quotes tonight.
Yeah.
If you can make the T-shirts, I'll just take 10% off of your revenue, and we're good. 5%, just fine. You keep all the rest of the money. Just send me my 5% royalty check.
All right. Most things don't kill you.
That's not original. I've heard other people say similar things, but I thought of that specifically when I decided that I liked roller coasters after many years of not liking them, or at least not liking them in theory. The first memory I have of being on a roller coaster when I was 11 or 12, and Space Mountain in Florida, and this is when I think I recently found out Disney World had only been open for 2 years, like when we went and saw it. So it was brand new, and everything was clean. So that's why my memory of Orlando, Disneyland, seems to be so much better than everyone else's. But we were on Space Mountain, and like it's pitch dark inside, and I just saw myself going up this thing. I didn't even want to go on the ride before, but my cousins made me go on it. And then I opened up my eyes briefly, and I saw all these stars, and then we started moving down. I shut them, and I just kind of held like this for the next hour we were on the ride, or however long it felt. And then a few years later, like I was on some other ride in, I forget where. I think it might have been the California Disneyland on a cousins reunion in 2001 or something. and I was on one of the there was like something called, it was a Jeep, and it was like a more of a motorized ride with this Jeep would move around in different corners. But there was this cool effect in which it was this bunch of those jets of steam shooting down, and they were projecting a wall on it, and then you went through the wall, and it was the coolest thing. And the way I was keeping myself sane, because I was much older then, it was like, this isn't going to kill you. They safety tested this thing. And I realized this was a very safe way of experiencing extreme physical sensations without doing a whole lot of work. You just had to wait in line for a while. And so I said, you know what, I should seek out more of these. This is a safe way of doing things. I learned how to do artwork by using an Amiga 1000 in a workspace program I was in college, because I could play with the colors without messing up the paint. I wouldn't waste any paint, and I wouldn't get my hands dirty. But I could say, oh, if you add red to green, it turns yellow. Yellow? What happens if you add blue? Oh, shading. So I was able to explore all these things using deluxe paint on the Amiga 1000. And that's, it was kind of this theme of trying things that are safe, and then kind of pulling you into things. Roller coasters are kind of in that same category. I won't go on the ones that I know will make me sick now, but at least I'll go on the ones that will, if there's at most 2 axes of rotation, that's okay. 3 I can't do.
And was that a hard-earned lesson?
That was a judgment call I made the last time was on one.
There's a few things that you guys have been saying, Jersey and Dave, where you're talking about sort of forming, but like the theme of permission to build this thing, and the theme of and this is me sort of throwing an idea, see if I'm misinterpreting. It's like, do you build a thing, or how much do you build before it becomes part of the world out there, right? So you could get someone's permission if they recognize your talent. You join their company, or you could try to find a way to make your services of value by starting your own company. And that's just a lot more work. Yep. And so I'm just, let's see. I don't know if that sort of resonates with what you were sort of sharing as far as your journey with that. But like, if it does, then what
scale?
When do you start to this is one of the things we chew on the Lean Into Art Cast, is sort of like, when you try to be independent, you end up wearing a lot of hats. Yep. Right, and so like there's this business hat that like a lot of us can sort of not always be comfortable with it, right? Yep. And there's just so many things you have to take on that are beyond like that core skill, and becoming part of someone else's machine, versus now if you're doing the business, you're inherently going to take on making your own machine, and just a lot more work.
Yeah. 2 things come to mind. One is scale. The other is external expectations and metrics. One of the things, I have an issue with authority a lot of the time. I want to know why people are making decisions. I want to know how they're coming to their conclusions. I want to know the reason why they are leaning one way or the other. And if there isn't a reason there, I'm not going to accept that. One of the built-in expectations about being a productive business person is, how fast can you scale this thing? How big can you make it? And a lot of people look at it as like, so how much money is in this thing? Or like, how big do you want to get? You should get bigger. I mean, you should have an ad in the Super Bowl. That's when you know you've made it. And that utterly doesn't. I'm not interested in that at all. It's because I'm interested.
What if to twist this now? What if what if exists? What if something exists where someone in that sort of business expert, like you've been exploring your path of becoming a design expert and an engineering expert and all these things, an expert in paper and stationery and passionate about them. What if that happens for business then too? And you add that to the mix. Like, so someone who is in the business and has that passion angle isn't only measuring things based on what is the longest, what is the most exploitable resource I can get away with for the longest, right? I mean, that would be like a really harsh, over-summarized, dispassionate way to describe business. I think some people are actually into considering a few other factors because something about, they believe it, right? Like, so some people believe that like by powering a business, it helps spread, it's empowering, right? So guess what? Now artists have independent artists have such a huge voice because of, I don't know, so many factors. Anything from like content management system providers to ad networks to, I don't know, like to better software, and any of these things. You could be like this super big believer and passionate about your business, but like not trying to overly exploit it or something. I don't know.
So, are you saying the scenario is you believe so much in the value, empowering value of one's business activities that it could have, that implicitly you should scale, you should grow, you should promote, you should
at least have a taste for it, where it's just this becomes the tools on your palette, where like you got comfortable with in the light model of color how green and red made yellow. Is that what you said? Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
Like,
is that right?
And,
that's right.
I don't know. Yeah, Jersey's nodding.
In RGB it does.
Yes.
Yeah. And so in the same way, like, so a business person could be like, yeah, I've been around the block and I've seen this fail a few different ways and whatever, and I know, like, that's it. I'm here to help people who are freaking passionate get rich or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good
or
for
rich.
them.
Yeah,
that's the second part. Their expectations aren't my expectations, and I'm very comfortable with, like, I like this. I don't need to go fast. I don't need to do this to impress anybody. I need to do this in my own way. And what helps remind me of this when I'm seeing what other people want to do, and they're just as lost as I am at it. You know, some of them may actually make it, and like, good for them. You know, good for Elon Musk for all the stuff that he's doing, right? But it's I'm not interested in scaling to meet the most needs for the mostest, and I'm much more interested in like the human scale truths. I mean, it even goes down to things like the kind of things I tend to like are little gadgets. Like I love collecting input devices. I've got like 15 keyboards now. I keep buying them. I can't type on all 15 at them once, but it makes me extremely happy to have an example of each one. I probably even have more than that. That's things
Scale,
like watches, handguns, like the design of like a gun, like its lethality, it's like shaped over like dozens and dozens of years of like really life or death use. I can appreciate the mechanical design that goes into it, and I can get a thrill from like examining one in person and learning how to operate it correctly. But on the other, a tank would probably be a little bit too big. It's not personal enough. Although I like that gets more into systems of use. I do like airliners and the idea that that someone has had to spend all this money to build like a really perfect or really useful. I like the idea that there's a lot of thought that went into it. But I would never want to make an airliner. That's something I can't do by myself, which maybe goes to a third thing. Authorship is very important to me. You can't be an author if you have a committee. And I need to be the author. That's, I think, at the core of my creative process. I don't tell everybody this. So, like, when I make that beautiful thing, I want my name to be intimately tied to it, and I don't want anyone else's name on it. There are people I worked with or something, but the conception of the idea, the bringing it to fruition, it has to be of me, and it has to be of my own truth. And that's very difficult to do if you scale things, unless you're Steve Jobs and a jerk to everybody. Or I don't know how Elon Musk does it, but
there's I'm imagining like it's probably about embracing the different roles. Like, so coming up to let's see, finding a way where I'm guessing he's the producer. He's probably still acting in some scientific role or whatnot. Yet, he's at the brand level, right? So he's or creators that are willing or are comfortable with that. I'm hearing a lot of what you're describing is like a taste thing. It's like it's important it's like you're embracing your taste for the kind of things you make and the kind of business that you are comfortable with continuing. And so someone like Elon Musk has a different taste.
Well, I think, and not only the taste, but the how, right? So how you want to go about doing that and what components of that are important to you. And I think that's something that, kind of every artist needs to go through and needs to figure out. And I think that's it's kind of part of that action and reflection that I think Lean Into Art talks about a lot of the time is really how do you figure out where your boundaries are, where your true desires are? Because, as you're moving through your career, you find yourself kind of chasing, Jersey, to your point earlier, how do you get famous to be famous? And you're chasing kind of how do I get that recognition? And at some point, and I don't know if it's maturity or luck or stumble, but you stop and you say, okay, wait a minute, here are the things that I know that make me me and that is going to make me successful for myself, kind of that internal look.
Something just reminded me of this. There was a formative comic book I read when I was in college called The Trouble with Girls. I don't know if either of you ever read this. I probably saw it on the shelf. It was it's about this all-American, like very competent person who just was born that way. And because of that, people are constantly trying to sleep with him, trying to hire him to do these things. But all he really wants to do is be left alone, marry a mousy woman, and live in a small bungalow. That's his dream. But he's so good at what he does that he just keeps doing these things. And so people will come up to say things like, Les, you have all these abilities. I bet you would want to control, you could control the world. And he said, nah, 2% of the world's wealth would be enough for me. And so that line stuck with me. It says 2%. And I kept seeing that number come up over and over again. When you looked at spam response rates, 2% of idiots are clicking on those links and seeing stuff like this, bulk mail response. It's the 1%, 2% range. And when you read books who's that guy who did that manifesto? I can't remember. The Creative Manifesto. Hugh, the guy who did the cartoons on business cards.
Oh gosh, right, yeah. Oh,
I can't believe I can't remember.
Killing me. Yep.
Not Hugh Laurie, Hugh McLeod. Hugh McLeod.
Nope.
Is that right? McLeod?
I think you're right.
Yeah. So, and he talked about getting your 10,000 followers and 10,000 followers being enough to get your line of work. 2% skim milk, that's the minimum that will not taste terrible. So this idea of there's only a very small amount of audience that needs to really be there to provide any kind of validation. And I saw this in my own traffic. When I noticed that of all the hits that I would get, the people who are really, really engaged, it was a very small fraction of it, but the extreme value and power of that small percentage of people who really resonated with what I did. Those were really, one of those 2% people, they were 1,000 times the value of anyone just saw you, oh yeah, you, and then they would go along. Those are the people that we want to make connections with as creators, as writers, as people who are reaching out to people. Those are the people who would be in our army, and we are in their army. And together we create these kind of things. I think Seth Godin talks about this stuff too. Tribes. Yep. And so so I think going back to what Kate was saying, one thing I was thinking as she was speaking was there is a faith that I had when I was making all these various decisions. It wasn't hoping that things would turn out okay. Or if I work hard enough, then maybe I'll become famous. It's I have my 2% out there. I know it's this because I've seen them. I've met them. It doesn't happen very often, but when the connection happens. And if you 10,000 hits, 1% of 10,000 is what, 10? 10 people out of that, 10 people who are going to blow your mind every time you talk to them, or everything that you do to them is incredibly important to you. That's an amazing creative powerhouse that you can tap into if we could only maintain it. So when I'm thinking about service to people, I'm thinking about service to my tribe. I'm thinking about service to my tribe, and I'm doing that because I'm in service to myself, and I'm sharing that aspect of myself to them so they can reach in and they can be part of it. And there is a certain role that you have to play, but it doesn't have to be the customer service role in which like the customer is always right. That you have to you play the markets to maximize your exposure by minimizing the weird content of what you're doing. I guess I probably even should say this. It's like the creative version of Rule 34. In which there's a creative reason. If you make something creative, there's an audience for it, and it's 1 or 2%, and it.
Oh, okay.
I think that
I
people
just had to look
out.
up what Rule 34 was.
Yeah.
And now I
no-
know.
Okay. And I don't know, but that's okay.
Well,
Is
we'll
it-
link to it in the show notes, and I encourage
I-
people to do a search for it on
You
their
could-
own.
Yeah, link
I
to
was
it in the
guessing.
Wikipedia entry.
Yeah.
I think that would be safe.
Yeah.
So-
yeah, everyone has their audience. Believe in that. They just
is
need to know it's there.
I just looked it up.
Um,
Now I'm in.
That's so. Okay, so I can't think of a better way to cap the entire episode, Jersey, than that.
Yeah.
I think that was amazing. With that's a really good insight. I don't think we have an answer for how do you find your 2% and how do you steel yourself to get to that point and all that. But knowing that it's out there and seeking to acquire that taste.
Well,
The universe has strange ways of getting back to you, but you have to be out there for you to be gotten back at.
Well, I think what I'm going to take away from this and take a lot more seriously is because just to sort of cap it on my end when we talk about webcomics, I recently got back into making my own webcomics again, and this is after an extended period where I was working mostly as a freelancer and as somebody who worked in publishing. So I was doing stuff that was rewarding to me, but it wasn't. Like you said, I couldn't put my name at the bottom and have it be a personal thing. I wasn't intimately tied into the thing that was being made. And once I started doing my own webcomic again, I found myself resenting any intrusion on that time. Anything that interrupted the production of that thing that nobody cares about yet. I looked at my analytics recently. I think I got about 50 readers. Hooray, right?
That's a great place to start.
That's a great place to start. But I mean, you put it in show it to my mom and say hey mom, look, I got 50 readers. She's like, what does that mean? But to me, this thing is the whole world, and anything that interrupts it is it drives me crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I'm being selfish. I'm being selfish because I care more
Good.
about this thing than anybody else does.
Yep.
But that's how I achieve that authenticity and honesty in order to connect with that 2% people who are actually going to get something out of this darn thing. And it's just it's a matter of time and grinding to find
Yeah.
that 2%. Right?
Yeah, that's part of the uncertainty that I have to deal with. It's what drives you nuts is not knowing when it's going to drop. For me, I have a little bit less of that anxiety because it happened to me. Because when the emergent task planner, actually not that year, it was the concrete goals tracker. I was getting about 20 hits a day, until that. So Bartlemy Design posted a link to it, and he was a more successful, popular graphic designer, and I got 200 hits. Whoa, 200 hits! And then it says, I want to feel that again. I'm going to make another form and put it out there. And it got no interest. And the one after that got no interest. And this one I was really sure was going to be awesome. I got no interest. And then I made this thing based on a request, could you put these things on one page and put it up there? And said, yeah, I don't think it'll work, but let me put it up there. I'll call this the Emergent Task Planner. And that's the one that took off. And it's only by putting it out there, by creating a portal for the signal to go through, that something else unexpected came back. And I was, not always grateful for that, but having written, being able to recognize it for what it is you throw stuff out there and stuff comes back and hits you in some unexpected part of your face. Or it opens a door you didn't see before because something didn't come back and open it. Or you didn't see it because you just had to move 10 more feet this way, and then you could see around that corner. Then it's I didn't have any idea that what's Rule 34? That's the says what? I guess that's true. Is it true? No. But And now I was able to use it in a constructive, creative analogy. And now people are wondering what the hell Rule 34, and they're all going to think that I'm this huge pervert. But you know what? Maybe that's the thing that gets out there. Dave's human after all. He doesn't always think about boxes and numbers. Who knows? And like I said, most things won't kill you. There might be a few haters out there, but haters don't produce anything, and I can discount them.
Yeah.
And then if you have your 1 or 2% people around you, you have your podcast, you have your loved ones. I mean, you have what you need to weather most storms. You know, you can be thankful for that, and you can continue to leverage it. And that's, I think, what all creatives need. Well, everybody needs. So providing something unique of yourself in a form that can be accessed and seen and shared. You know, that's your way of putting that net outward and drawing those people in. So you're in a unique place to be able to do that. A lot of people don't have those gifts. So, yay for us.
Oh, I feel great about tomorrow. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to need to go for a walk. So people should go to davidsay.com and read the blog and check out the 10-year goals for 2024, because I think this is a really super ambitious way to frame up where you want to go next. Ambitious in the sense of the goals themselves, but also the way to remind yourself to approach it in a spirit of play. I think that's fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun for me to watch the blog as it unfolds, as you attack each of these different goals. And then we'll link to your Amazon store where people can get your stationery. And I mean, I'm not just paying lip service here. This is a product that I actually use and get a lot of value out of.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Mine is out of reach, but it's nearby.
Well, and I gotta get a new one. My current one is almost filled, and mine is like a custom one that I made with.
That's another thing. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Oh.
Yeah.
Could we make custom cover versions of this? We could get. We should talk about this. Is there something that we can do to make custom comic book version covers of things?
Let's talk, Dave.
Let me show you something.
All right.
So here's one of the prototypes for the full-size ETPs.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, you see there's, like, margin issues and stuff like that I need to fix. But it's on this, like, sketchbook style, like, hardboard.
Awesome.
Double wire bound. But there's this space on the inside, you know, where there is nothing printed. And it's a darn shame. And there's this whole blank page here where there's nothing printed, and it's a darn shame. Or even like smaller ones. This will be. I'm going to redo the layout on this because I have a new idea for it that will. But this, I like the idea of like collaborating with. You know, like I love your illustrations. That polar bear I love, or whatever that bear thing. That bear's awesome.
Yeah, that's my
webcomic. And so like it would be awesome just to have like awesome bear version of this.
I'm going to email you after this. I'm going to send you some art to look at because we need to talk about this.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things. The door opens, a thought flies out. We happen to be in the same communication channel, and then possibilities of that happen just because we decided to share something. I mean, like, how did you meet your friends? How did you meet your wives? I mean, this was not preordained. You didn't follow a recipe, and like you said, all right, we're going to take the test, and then I'll find out in 2 weeks who I get to marry. It was like it was probably a random thing. You didn't see it coming, I'm guessing, or maybe you did. Maybe you're high school sweethearts, who knows? But it was probably something dumb, like Rob's luxurious long hair caught the sun in just the right way, and then you took notice. Or maybe it was the other way around. You were picking up something off the floor, and like Rob was trying not to look, but he had to. Or you said something really smart in a class, or something struck you, but it was not an interaction that you were looking for. I'm guessing. And I'm just thinking about movies now, but in general, like my best friends are ones that said something dumb to me, or I said something dumb to them at some point, and then we both laughed and we started talking. Like I have a really good friend now that like we were riding these really terrible Chinese-made scooters, and these guys came in rolling in on these beautifully restored Vespas. And then the friend I was running with it, and I said like, "Hey, we both have scooters. We should talk to them." I said, "No, we can't talk to them. They're royalty." But she went and talked to them anyway. And then they were completely uninterested in joining our scooter club. But they took my card, and one of them looked and said, like, this card is interesting. There's a story in this. And they came and talked to me afterwards. And so, I never would have been friends with him unless this had happened. And it blows my mind that that's how my universe is formed. These random connections with people, the school I went to, this game I happened to see, this book that caught my eye at the right moment. It's incredible where we are now. Like and that's something that I guess keeps me fresh. And this is what helps me with dealing with the uncertainty, because the uncertainty could be awesome. It's tedious most of the time, maybe, but it could be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, reminding ourselves that serendipity has a factor in all this stuff, and that the uncertainty permits that serendipity to happen.
Yeah,
right?
And the more stuff you put out there, the more opportunities for the serendipity to occur.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I think that the uncertainty could be awesome is another T-shirt jersey. So maybe
yeah, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, the
Okay.
uncertainty could be awesome.
And also, I want to make sure that we talked about time a lot, and I want to respect Dave's time. And Rob was trying to get us to do that earlier, and then Dave and I went off on all these tangents.
Bonus chapters, wonderful bonus chapters.
Do you have matching microphone stands?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, let's see. Actually, my main setup is really similar to jerseys, but
I was noticing that thing looked the same, similar color to
exactly.
But.
Yep, color matched.
But go on, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just like mesmerized by it for a moment.
But Dave,
it's podcast branding.
Thank you so much, Dave, for hanging out with us and being
Anytime.
philosophical with us. That was so much fun, and I always love getting together with you. And we will get in touch about other things too. But people should go to davidsay.com, Dave Say on Twitter. Any other social places that you want that people to look at your stuff?
Just one more. Bear TP. I'm on Twitter at Dave Say. I have a Facebook page I sort of don't use. I don't know. I guess I'm more active on. I try to tweet more these days. Interesting things. But this kind of a split audience thing. Yeah, I'm around.
Okay. And we'll link to all these things in the show notes as well. And then I want to say, if people enjoyed this episode, a great way that you can let us know that you enjoyed it is by going to iTunes and giving us a star review, however many stars you think we deserve. You don't have to write a full review, but just that helps more people find the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, giving the video a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you really got something out of it and you're like, holy smokes, I really need to get more out of or provide these guys with more value, you go to our Patreon page at leanintoart.com, or no, patreon.com/leanintoart, and then you can chip in $1 a month and help us reach our sustainable trade goal
Awesome.
that we're trying to reach, to pay for our time to do this show.
Bear TP.
Oh man, we are going to talk after this, Dave. But did I miss anything, Rob?
Well, yeah. Thank you, Kate, for joining us. And,
Yes.
and,
Thank you, Kate.
being a
Happy to be here.
guest co-host. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be found on Twitter, right?
Yep, Kate Stenzinger at Kate Stenzinger on Twitter.
Awesome.
Other way to find me is to talk to 5-year-olds. They usually know where I'm at. That's kind of my social media right now.
Uh-huh.
The 5-year-olds.
They follow you around?
That's right.
That would scare
They
me.
do dig her.
But yes, thank you, Kate, for hanging out with us. We always love having you on the show, and we'd love to have you back anytime you want to come back.
Great, thanks, guys.
All right.
Okay, well, until
Yes,
next
sing us
time,
out.
everybody, I have been Jersey Droz of leanintart.com and Jersey on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to kill the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you,
Yes,
guys.
sweet.
Thank you.
Awesome.